When I turned the doorknob that morning, I didn't expect to find the woman I used to call my sister crying on my porch, suitcase in hand. And I certainly didn't expect that by letting her in, I'd be opening the door to the darkest chapter of our family's history. My name is Grace. I'm 53 years old, a mother of 2 grown kids, and I live in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. The kind of place where neighbors wave when they drive by, and the sound of sprinklers at dusk feels like background music to a peaceful life. For the most part, my life was peaceful. Until Diane came back. Diane and I hadn't lived under the same roof since we were teenagers. Growing up, she was the wild one, the kind who snuck out through the window and came home smelling like cigarettes and perfume. I was the opposite. Steady, predictable, always trying to please our parents. After Mom died and Dad's health started to fail, we drifted apart. She moved to Chicago, married a man who promised her the world, and I stayed here, close to home. For years, our calls were short and polite. How are you? How's work? Tell Dad I love him. We never really talked. So when she called me last winter, voice trembling, saying her marriage had fallen apart and she had nowhere to go, I didn't hesitate. She was my sister. No matter what happened between us, that word still meant something. The morning she arrived, the snow was melting into slush, and my front porch smelled faintly of wet pine from the wreath I hadn't taken down yet. She looked small, smaller than I remembered. Her coat hanging loose, her hair tied in a messy bun. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Can I stay for a while?" she whispered. "Of course," I said, pulling her into a hug. She didn't cry. She just held on tight, her body trembling. I brought her inside, made her coffee, and tried not to stare at the faint bruises on her wrist. Over the next few days, Diane settled into the guest room down the hall, the one my kids used when they visited. She helped with dishes, folded laundry, even offered to cook dinner once a week. For the first time in years, the house felt full again. I'd hear her humming softly while doing the dishes, or pacing the living room late at night while she talked on the phone. She said it was her lawyer, something about the divorce paperwork. I wanted to believe that was true. We fell into a gentle routine. I'd leave for work at the community library around 9, and when I came home, she'd have something simmering on the stove. Stew, chili, or her famous lemon chicken. Sometimes we'd sit at the kitchen island with a bottle of cheap red wine and talk about old times, about Dad's stubbornness, Mom's laugh, the summers we used to ride our bikes down to the lake. For a while, it felt like we were healing something old. One night, about 3 weeks after she moved in, we sat on the couch watching an old movie. Diane leaned her head on my shoulder and said softly, "You've always been the strong one, Grace." I smiled. "I just do what I have to do." She sighed, her voice trembling a little. "You don't know how lucky you are to have this house, this peace. I wish I'd made different choices." Her eyes lingered on the framed photo of Dad on the mantel, the one taken a year before he passed. "He loved you so much," I said. She nodded, her eyes glistening. "Yeah, but I think he loved you more." It was a strange thing to say, and it hung between us like smoke. I brushed it off, but something in her tone left me uneasy. Over the next few weeks, I noticed little things. She kept her room locked, not just when she went out, but even when she was home. If I knocked, she'd say, "Just a second," and then step out, closing the door behind her. One afternoon, I went to change the sheets in the guest room while she was out. The doorknob wouldn't turn. She'd installed a small silver lock on the inside, the kind you buy from a hardware store. I remember standing there, holding the fresh linens, feeling a dull ache of confusion. Why would my sister need to lock a room in my house? That night I asked her about it. We were sitting at the dining table, a candle flickering between us. "Hey," I said casually, "I noticed you put a lock on the door. Everything okay?" She looked up, startled, then forced a smile. "Oh, Yeah, sorry about that. I've got some personal things. Divorce papers, receipts. I don't want anything to get mixed up. Of course, I said, trying to sound understanding, but something in her eyes, that flash of defensiveness, stuck with me. I didn't push, but from that night on, I couldn't stop thinking about that locked door. Then came the night I heard the noises. It was close to midnight. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums. I was half asleep when I heard a soft, scraping sound coming from down the hall. At first, I thought it was the heater, but then a door creaked. Footsteps. I got up, careful not to wake my husband, Mark, and stepped into the hallway. There was a thin strip of light under Diane's door. I walked closer, and for a moment, I thought I heard whispering. Then silence. I stood there for a long minute, heart thudding, before walking back to bed. Maybe she couldn't sleep. Maybe she was just talking to her lawyer again. I tried to tell myself that, but the next morning when I passed her door, I noticed something strange. A faint smell of burning paper. The smell lingered for days, faint but sharp, like ashes hidden under air freshener. And then, one morning, when she left for a doctor's appointment, I walked past her room again and felt a strange draft near the baseboard. That's when I saw it. A small gap where the wallpaper didn't quite line up. I crouched down. The air felt cooler there. Something inside me, curiosity, fear, maybe both, told me there was more to that room than she'd let on. I didn't know then that behind that wall was the secret that would tear our family apart. I didn't know that the sister I had opened my heart and home to was hiding something that belonged to all of us, and that her secret, her locked room, would lead us straight to the truth about what happened to our father's missing money. A week after I noticed the smell of burning paper, the air in the hallway felt heavier somehow, like the walls themselves were holding secrets. Diane had started leaving the house more often. She said she was meeting her lawyer, but her explanations were always vague. Once I offered to drive her. She refused. Too quickly. "I'm fine," she said, grabbing her purse. "It's not far." Then she flashed a quick smile, the kind that looked more like a cover than comfort, and hurried out. The moment the door clicked shut, the house felt different. Quieter, almost like it was waiting for something. That day I went about my usual chores, washed the dishes, folded laundry, watered the plants. But my mind kept circling back to that locked door. By late afternoon, curiosity got the best of me. I told myself I wasn't snooping. I was just checking, just making sure everything was okay. So I walked down the hall and stood outside her room. The lock gleamed in the light, clean and new. I tried the handle. Locked. I knelt, pressing my ear against the door. Nothing. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. Faint scuff marks on the hardwood, like furniture had been dragged across it recently. I leaned closer to the keyhole and inhaled. That smell, faintly burnt, faintly chemical, was stronger now. I pulled back, uneasy. I didn't open the door that day. But I started to notice everything. The way she kept her phone face down at dinner. The way she flinched whenever Dad's name came up. The stack of mail that arrived for her, all from different banks. And then there were the nights she didn't come home until after midnight, slipping in quietly like a teenager breaking curfew. One Sunday, as we sat in the kitchen drinking coffee, I decided to gently ask. "Hey," I said softly. "You've been out late a lot lately. You okay?" She looked up from her mug, her face unreadable. "Just trying to sort my life out, Grace." "You wouldn't understand." Her words stung, not for what she said, but how she said it. "I'm just worried," I replied. "You've been through a lot. You don't have to handle everything alone." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not alone," she whispered. "Not anymore." Then she got up, poured her coffee down the sink, and left the room. Later that night, while I was reading in bed, Mark looked up from his tablet. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Everything okay with Diane?" I hesitated. "I don't know. Something's off." He frowned. "You think she's hiding something?" I sighed. "I think she's in pain. But yes, maybe both." Mark reached for my hand. "Grace, you've done more than enough. If she's got secrets, they're hers to deal with. But the thing is, in families, secrets don't just belong to one person. They spread, they seep, they hurt everyone. And I had a feeling this one already was." The next morning, a letter arrived addressed to the estate of William Carver. That was our father's name. I froze. Dad had passed 5 years ago, and as far as I knew, his estate had been settled long ago. The envelope was from a local bank. I turned it over, heart pounding. When I opened it, my breath caught. Inside was a statement for an account I didn't recognize. The balance? $127,000. Status inactive, pending claim. My father's signature was at the bottom, dated 2 months before he died. That afternoon, I found Diane in the living room, watching TV. I handed her the envelope. "This came in the mail, for Dad's estate." Her face drained of color. "Oh," she said, barely glancing at it. "That must be a mistake. I'll take care of it." She reached out to grab it, but I pulled it back. "Wait, you knew about this account?" Her eyes flickered. Guilt, then deflection. "I don't know. Maybe Dad mentioned something before he passed. Why are you making a big deal out of it?" I studied her. "Because this is the first time I've seen his signature in 5 years. And this account, it wasn't listed in his will." Her jaw tightened. "Grace, please, drop it." She got up and walked out of the room. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bank statement sat on my nightstand, illuminated by the dim glow of the lamp. My father had always been careful with money, not rich, but disciplined. He kept a little black notebook where he logged every check, every bill, every dollar he spent. When he passed, we thought everything had been accounted for, but there had been rumors, whispers, that some of his savings had gone missing before his death. At the time, I dismissed them. Now, I wasn't so sure. 2 days later, while Diane was out, I went into the attic looking for some old photo albums. That's when I noticed the stack of storage boxes labeled Dad's Stuff, boxes Diane had insisted on organizing when she moved in. I opened one. Inside were papers, letters, receipts, but tucked at the bottom was a manila envelope with my name written on it, in Diane's handwriting. My hands trembled as I pulled it open. Inside were dozens of small receipts from the same bank that had sent the letter. Withdrawals of $500, $1,000, $2,500, all signed in handwriting that looked eerily like Dad's. But the dates were wrong. They were all after he'd gone into hospice care, and one, the last one, was dated 3 days after he died. I sat there in the dusty attic staring at the paper until the lines blurred. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath shallow. It couldn't be true. It couldn't. But deep down, I knew. Diane had been managing his accounts at the time. She'd told me she was helping him pay bills because he was too weak to handle paperwork. She was the one who handled the closing of his estate. She was the one who said there wasn't much left, Grace. And I had believed her. When she came home that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen, the envelope on the table between us. Her eyes landed on it instantly. Her expression hardened. "Where did you find that?" "In the attic," I said quietly. "In one of Dad's boxes." She swallowed, eyes darting to the side. You shouldn't have gone through my things. Those were Dad's things, I said, not yours. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she whispered, You don't understand. Then help me, I said, make me understand. But instead of answering, she picked up the envelope and walked out, slamming the door behind her. That night, the lock on her bedroom door clicked again, but this time I didn't just hear it, I felt it, like a final barrier between us, a sister I thought I'd known, and a secret I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. For 2 nights after our confrontation, Diane barely spoke to me. She moved around the house like a shadow, silent, withdrawn, eyes fixed on her phone. The warmth that at once filled our kitchen was gone. Even Mark noticed. She's leaving soon, right? He asked one night. I nodded. In a week. She said she found a small apartment near the river. He hesitated. Maybe it's for the best. Maybe it was, but deep down, something inside me whispered, not yet. That Saturday morning, Diane left early again. She said she was running errands, but her tone was tight, guarded. The sound of her car fading down the street left a ringing silence behind. I walked into the hallway and stopped in front of her locked door. It stood there like it always did, plain white, simple brass knob, silver keyhole. But now it felt different, heavier, like it was holding everything she wouldn't say. I don't know what made me do it that day. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was fear, maybe I just couldn't keep living with that feeling, that something poisonous was spreading quietly through my family. Whatever it was, I went to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a small screwdriver, and carried it down the hall. The metal clicked softly as I twisted the screws from the lock plate. Each sound echoed down the empty hallway, tiny, guilty sounds that made my pulse race. After a minute, the latch loosened. I turned the knob. The door creaked open an inch. And then, the smell hit me. It wasn't decay, not exactly. It was paper, dust, something burnt, like a mixture of old receipts and cigarette smoke. I pushed the door open fully. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp in the corner, curtains drawn, windows sealed tight. The air felt thick, stale, heavy. And everywhere, papers. Stacks and stacks of them scattered across the floor, pinned to the walls, piled on the desk. Receipts, bank slips, handwritten notes, and photos, old family photos, of Dad, of us. But some had been marked with red ink, circles, arrows, words scribbled in the margins. Transfer pending. Wire cleared. Grace doesn't know. My breath caught in my throat. In the center of the room stood a metal filing cabinet, locked. Beside it, a small table with a half-burned candle and a notebook. I reached for the notebook first. On the first page, in Diane's handwriting, were the words, Dad trusted me. He shouldn't have. My fingers went cold. I flipped the page. Each entry was like a confession, dated months before he passed. He asked me to pay the hospital bill. I did. But I used his savings first, just until my divorce is final. Grace will never understand. She always had him on a pedestal. I didn't steal. I borrowed. I'll pay it back, I will. The entries grew shorter over time, shakier, desperation seeping into every line. He knows. He's going to change the will. I can't let that happen. After, I'll make it right. I sank onto the small chair beside the desk, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My father, the man who raised us, who believed in honesty above all else, had been betrayed by his own daughter. And worse, he knew. I wanted to scream, but the sound stayed trapped in my chest. Instead, I sat there for a long time, staring at the chaos around me. Papers whispered in the soft breeze from the vent, almost like voices. It was as if the room itself had been waiting for me. After what felt like an hour, I forced myself to open the filing cabinet. The key was in the drawer, tucked under a stack of envelopes. Inside were folders labeled by year, 2016, 2017. The last one was labeled Final. I pulled it out. Inside was a copy of Dad's will, and a newer version, typed but unsigned. The newer one listed everything: the house, the savings, the investments, and beside each asset, Dad's original note had said, "to be divided equally between my daughters." But in the newer draft, the note beside Diane's name had been crossed out. At the bottom of the page, in his handwriting, "Until Diane returns what was taken, her portion will remain in trust." I closed my eyes. So he had known. He tried to protect both of us, even as he was dying, and she'd hidden this, not just from me, from everyone. I sat there, shaking, staring at that piece of paper, wondering how long she had lived with that guilt. Then I heard the front door open. My body went still. "Grace?" Her voice echoed faintly down the hallway. Panic surged through me. I stuffed the papers back into the cabinet, closed the notebook, and tried to look calm. But the sound of her footsteps, slow, deliberate, told me she already knew. The door creaked open behind me. She stood there, framed in the light of the hallway, her face pale but unreadable. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. "You opened it," she said quietly. Her tone wasn't angry, just tired. "I had to," I said softly. "You weren't going to tell me." She stepped into the room, eyes darting to the scattered papers. "You weren't supposed to see this." "Why, Diane? Why hide it?" She pressed her lips together, her voice trembling when she spoke. "Because I did something I can't undo." She sank down onto the edge of the bed, her shoulders slumped. "When my marriage fell apart," she began, "I had nothing. No job, no money, no place to live. Dad offered to help, but it wasn't enough. And I thought, just for a little while, I'd borrow from his savings, just until I got back on my feet." Her eyes filled with tears. But then the bills came. The lawyers, the debts, I couldn't stop. And by the time I realized what I'd done, he found out. I swallowed hard. "What did he say?" She looked at the floor. "He said I'd broken his heart. He told me he couldn't trust me again and that he was changing the will." Silence stretched between us. "So you hid this," I whispered. "All of it?" She nodded slowly. "I didn't want you to hate me. You've always been the good one, Grace, the one who did everything right." Her words hit like a blade, sharp, unfair, but not entirely wrong. I wanted to scream, to tell her that being good hadn't saved me from anything, from loss, from pain, from loneliness. But instead, I just said, "You didn't have to lie. You could have told me." She shook her head. "You would have told Mom, and she never would have forgiven me." I took a step closer. "You think hiding the truth made it easier?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "No. It just made me forget who I was." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence in that small, paper-filled room was the heaviest I'd ever felt. Then I said the only thing I could. "We'll figure this out. Together." She looked up, startled. "Grace, you can't fix this." "Maybe not," I said, "but I can stop it from breaking what's left of our family." Her lip trembled. "You'd still help me?" I hesitated. "You're still my sister." For the first time in weeks, something softened in her eyes. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine, a small, fragile gesture, but it felt like the first step toward something. Not forgiveness yet, but maybe understanding. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dad's handwriting. Those words, "Until Diane returns what was taken," burned in my mind like a scar. I replayed everything: the hospital days, the funeral, Diane crying beside the coffin. How many tears had been guilt and how many grief? The line between the two had blurred so deeply I didn't know anymore. By morning, the house felt colder, or maybe that was just me. Diane sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of untouched coffee. Her hair was messy, her face pale. I stood by the sink for a long moment, unsure if I should speak. Finally, I said quietly, "Mom's coming over today." She looked up, startled. "Why?" "She wants to see you." She said it's been too long. Diane's expression shifted. Fear, regret, and something else I couldn't name. "You told her?" she whispered. I hesitated. "Not everything, but she knows something's wrong." Mom arrived just after noon. Even before she stepped through the door, I could feel her energy. Sharp, strong, the kind that fills every room she enters. When she saw Diane, she froze. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, "You look tired." Diane tried to smile. "It's been a hard few weeks." Mom's eyes narrowed slightly. "I can imagine." She glanced around, then at me. "Can we talk?" "All of us?" We sat in the living room, the three of us, like some fragile reenactment of our past. The same couches, the same family photos, the same air that once held laughter and music, but now it felt like sitting in the ruins of something sacred. Mom folded her hands in her lap. "Grace says there's something you need to tell me." Diane's throat moved as she swallowed. Mom cut her off gently but firmly. "Whatever it is, say it. I've lived long enough to handle the truth." Diane's lips trembled. Her voice came out as a whisper. "I took money from Dad. Years ago. I told myself I'd pay it back, but I never did." The words fell heavy. No screams, no gasps, just silence. A silence that carried years of disappointment, heartbreak, and love, all tangled together. Mom's eyes glistened. "How much?" she asked softly. "Almost everything in his savings," Diane said. "I didn't mean to hurt him. I didn't know how to stop." Mom closed her eyes, as if steadying herself. When she spoke again, her voice was calm, too calm. "He knew," she said. "He told me before he died. He said he forgave you, but he didn't want you to forget." Diane's breath caught. "He forgave me?" Mom nodded. "He did. But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting." Tears slid down Diane's face. "I didn't deserve it." "No," Mom said quietly. "You didn't. But he gave it anyway." The words hit all of us differently. For me, it was relief, mixed with an ache I couldn't explain. For Diane, it was a wound reopening. And for Mom, it was the grief of a woman who'd lost her husband and was now losing the image of her perfect family. After a long silence, Mom turned to me. "And you, Grace, why did you open that room?" I hesitated. "Because I was afraid. Because I thought she was hiding something worse." Mom sighed. "And now you both know the truth. What will you do with it?" The question hung in the air. Diane whispered, "I'll sell my apartment. Pay back whatever I can." Mom shook her head gently. "This isn't about money, Diane. It's about trust. And that's harder to rebuild than any savings account." We sat there, three women bound by love, guilt, and the ghost of a man who'd tried to keep us together. And for the first time in years, I saw Diane not as my reckless sister or the one who'd made all the wrong choices, but as someone broken, desperate, trying to fix what she'd shattered. I reached over and took her hand. She looked up, surprised. "I'm not doing this for you," I said softly. "I'm doing it for him." A single tear rolled down her cheek, and she nodded. That night, after Mom left, I walked past the now unlocked door to the secret room. The papers were gone. The lamp was off. The air felt lighter, like the house itself could breathe again. Diane came to the doorway. "I'm moving out tomorrow," she said quietly. I nodded. "I know." She hesitated. "Thank you for not hating me." I smiled faintly. "You're still my sister. That's all that matters." She stepped forward, hugged me, really hugged me for the first time in years. And in that moment, all the noise, the anger, the regret, it all melted into something simple. Peace. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. When she drove away the next morning, I stood by the window, sunlight pouring over the floor. For the first time since Dad's death, the house didn't feel haunted anymore. Maybe forgiveness doesn't come in a moment. Maybe it arrives quietly, like morning light, inch by inch, and maybe that's what he wanted all along. Thank you for listening to this story. I wonder, which moment did you feel in your chest? Which line did you carry away? Tell me below. I read every comment. If this story touched you, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps these voices alive. I'll see you with another true story soon.